Hey there everyone and welcome to the channel. My name is Matt and today we are going to be playing Space Quest 3. I've chosen to start with Space Quest 3 rather than Space Quest 1. There are actually 6 of these because I feel Space Quest 3 really just shows you the spirit of what Space Quest is all about. 1 and 2 are awesome games, but this is a good start if you've never played Space Quest before. So I always loved this intro as a kid. I remember we got our first ad-lib card, so we went from PC speaker, which is basically the worst sound you can ever hear, right up to this, and it was like so realistic with that synthetic sound. And to me it just makes it cool. I have heard this done in Roland, what is it, MT32, so the really good MIDI synthesizer, and to me it actually sounds worse when it sounds realistic. I love just what they've done with it here though. So we've got a bit of an intro. This doesn't take too long. Gives you a bit of background as to where we're up to, which is really cool, so you don't actually need to have played Space Quest 1 and 2. But here it has been an undeterminate amount of time since Roger Wilco rocketed away from Vohol's burning space fortress. Time stands still for our hero in suspended animation. Its engines long spent, the small escape pod drifts aimlessly through unfamiliar starfields, its course altered many times by small asteroids and space debris. Inside, Roger lies undisturbed in his sleep chamber, but not for long. So a bit of background, Space Quest 1, you start out, you're a janitor on a starship that's attacked, and basically you blunder your way through surviving, and if you do things right, you actually kind of save the day. Space Quest 2, you sort of pick up where you left off, you're still a janitor, you've been forgotten as a hero, but you end up again in a bit of a predicament where you have to escape a massive asteroid. So you launch in this escape pod and you go into this sleep chamber, and that's the end of Space Quest 2. So here we are, floating away, we're asleep, and this giant junk freighter commanded by some sort of robot dude, as we've just seen there, has come along, and it is about to suck us up with a tractor beam. So the thing with Space Quest is the main character, Roger Wilco, which, yeah, is a play on words. He's kind of just a bit of a bumbling idiot. He doesn't really know where he's going or what he's doing, but we can see the pod, considered to be nothing more than another piece of scrap, is taken aboard a robot-commanded garbage freighter. Unfortunately, these robots have no regards for organics. So those of you who are Star Wars or Star Trek or any sort of science fiction fan will find a lot of parallels with this sort of stuff. I think this freighter and the robot commander is supposed to be like the scavenger people in Star Wars. As we can see here, the small pod is now jarred by a sudden shock which triggers the sleep chamber's revive mode. As the glass shroud slides back, Roger slowly begins to regain consciousness. So again, we've kind of just, fate has placed us into this weird situation which we're now going to have to get out of. He has no idea where he is, he has no idea what's going on, and it's going to be our job to sort of guide him through this. You get the little speech, where am I? Again, this game was released in 1989, so that's quite a while ago. Speech in games wasn't really a thing at that point. It did exist in a couple of them, but not full dialogue. That certainly wasn't a thing till much later, until CD-ROMs sort of took over and we had enough storage to do so. But as we can see here, we've kind of opened the door to our little pod. We're going to jump out, and here we are aboard this garbage freighter. So you notice that the sounds from the pod grow softer until they are imperceptible. Having served its purpose and taxed its resources, the pod gives a final hum and shuts down. That still brings back so many good memories of when I was a kid playing this. These sounds are just unforgettable, especially when you're younger and you spend hours and hours on a game like this. It's just cool to play it again. Okay, so this game is a combination of arrow key movement, so we can move our character around, do some circles, as well as text interpreter, so we can type things like look around. And this is heavily dependent on you asking the right questions at times, because it will not be obvious to solve these puzzles. So, we are standing in a debris-cluttered junk bay. An escape pod rests in the middle of the room. There are chunks of metal lying around which seem to be sections of old spaceware. So generally speaking, they'll give you clues. So like you said, there's spaceware in here, so let's look at the spaceware. The 8-pronged plug protrudes only slightly from the motivator's exterior. Sure. Look. Motivator. A closer look at the object on the floor reveals that it is a warp motivator. Cool. It looks a bit more high-tech than the other junk strewn around this locale. Sturdily constructed, its only protrusion is a modular plug near the base. Here we have a few clues. Notice how it says it looks a bit more high-tech than the other junk? That's kind of telling you that, yeah, you're probably going to need to use this at some point. If it goes into any detail, then yeah, it's probably needed. One other thing with this game is Scott Murphy and Mark Crow, the two guys who wrote it, they refer to themselves as the two guys for Andromeda. Really cool guys. They loved writing little Easter eggs and sort of fun ways to die and all that sort of thing in here. So it's kind of cool that, and kind of fun to just explore around, as well as actually try and solve, you know, the objective of this game, which, you know, at this point we have no idea. We're literally playing a bumbling space idiot. So if we have a look at the next screen, you know, we're quite impressed with the size of the junk freighter. Skeletal remains a stripped down space tanker lies half buried in the scrap. And we can see this is kind of a little tunnel thing. So yeah, let's walk through the little tunnel thing. And here we are on the inside of the tunnel. Do another look around. Someone or something has done a real job on this tanker. Was this a result of some space battle? Or perhaps you're not the only one roaming around in here. Well, we will find out soon enough, I dare say. So, again, this game, the whole thing with Space Quest and adventure games from this era is just to explore around, see what you can find. So again, we'll do another look around. The gutted carcass of a tanker opens up to reveal even more junk. A metal head rests nearby. So if you grew up or lived around the 80s, you'd kind of recognize this dude here. So if we go look head. Wow, an ancient model battle bot. I bet you'd hate to run into whatever brought this big guy down. Looks like something poked it in the eye. Again, this is a play on like Rock'em Sock'em robots, or those little robot things you could sort of buy and like battle out with your friends. Again, it's cool they've kind of put these things in because it makes the game a lot more fun. Another thing to do here is save the game frequently. So I'm going to call this on freighter. Can't spell. There we go. Okay. So another little trick with this game is like it is super unforgiving. So if we go to have a look what's down here. Oh gosh, you have stepped off a metallic escarpment and tumbled into the darkness. Twisted, jagged remains of old vehicles reach out to slow your dark descent, cutting short your life in the process. Ugh. So there are a lot of fun ways and just like annoying ways to die here, but I always love little comments they give. It wouldn't be so bad except for the sudden stop at the end. Next time, don't get so quite close to the edge. Alright. So, again, if we just look eye. So before when we kind of looked at the robot, it said something poked it in the eye. Again, that's giving you a clue. Maybe we should have a look at its eye. And we can see it's broken. So let's try climb into eye. And sure enough, we can climb down the robot head. But what have we got down here? This is looking promising. Look around. You find yourself in the bottom of another trash pit. An interesting array of alien artifacts is strewn from one end to the other. A large ship is in the middle and a small one is off to the side. So obviously we're going to need a ship to get off this garbage freighter. We're not going to want to stay here for too much longer because something's probably going to eat us or kill us or something. So let's just take a look at this little ship here. It's a cute little thing. You've never seen anything like it in these parts. But where are these parts? Nobody knows. Some writing on the exterior reads, "For a good time, don't call Hal." Another classic joke in there. I'm not sure what this ship is. It looks like a little baseball, but let's try get into ship. That doesn't seem to be available. Climb into ship. Not in a good location for climbing that. Climb into ship. No, so it looks like this little dude is not going to be what we're flying out in. Let's have a look at this big one. Look ship. It's a sleek looking number if you can disregard the junk it's rooted in. It must be a recent addition to the collection as everything seems to be intact. Etched on the side is the name, Aluminium Mallard. On the top is a small hatch. So again, if you've seen Star Wars, you would have heard of like Millennium Falcon. Again, the Aluminium Mallard's a bit of a play on that, which I always thought was kind of cool. So at the moment, we can't actually get to the hatch. The ship is actually super tall compared to us, even though the perspective isn't there. So we're going to have to come back to that. So let's climb up. So we're going to pop out the little eyeball here, and we can kind of wander our way back to where we came. But we know where the ship is. If you've played this game before, you notice I may be doing it slightly out of order to the optimum way, but I find that this gives it more context if you've never seen this before. So we know what we've got to do. We've basically got to get into that ship somehow. Another thing that always frustrated me was like, I never knew if he'd stop walking when he was behind something on a screen, so you'd never know if you have to hit the arrow key, but that's alright. Okay, so we found a warp motivator. Guarantee this little guy is going to be needed for that aluminium mallard. So we need to keep that in mind. Okay, so let's look around here as well. Various types of abandoned spacecrafts litter the floor of this intergalactic junkyard. All this place needs is a junkyard dog. You shiver at the thought. Look, ship. The bulbous craft looks like it's seen a lot of action in its day. You believe it to be a bow-tie fighter, dating back to the Clone Wars. A true relic. Another classic Clone Wars, TIE Fighter Star Wars type thing. So let's wander over here and see what we can find. I remember when I was a kid, this took me ages to figure out. There's this trash elevator thing here, so if you like, look, elevator. Buckets are attached to the conveyor. They haul metal debris to a horizontal conveyor above. You'd be like, get into bucket. Looks dangerous, but go ahead. You'll need to get closer though. I never quite figured out you had to stand right against it. And then he kind of like falls in just as the bucket comes up. Then, it's not wrong when it said it looked dangerous. So we are traveling up. And wait for it. This doesn't look good. And now we're on the conveyor. Oh, so if we do a look around here, the conveyor is no place for sightseeing. So we're kind of headed towards this like shredding thing down here. So we rather quickly have to get up and then jump. So we managed to jump across this like monorail type thingy here. I remember as a kid I used to find this hard too, but literally if you just use the left and right arrows you can't fall off. It's like walking a tightrope, so I guess Roger's kind of skilled in doing that if he's not skilled in space exploration, but whatever. Alright, so let's wander across here. And you can actually walk around the whole thing if you're really patient, but there's no need, because inside this little room here, what have we got? Look around. In this room, the rail makes a U-turn. There is a machine here which hangs under the rail. There is a chute at the bottom. In the middle are panels of monitoring devices being tended to by a droid. The droid doesn't like really care about you. Get onto machine. They call it a grabber. There we go. But yeah, the droid doesn't really care as long as you don't hang around and annoy it. I think if you hang around long enough, it'll shoot you. But let's not do that. So we can back up this dude around this like little monorail thing. I always liked the little flashing light and the beeping. Always thought that added to it a bit. Now, remember we found that warp motivator thing? So it's actually kind of around here. So the way Space Quest games and Sierra games work is they're generally a grid. When you have the beam that's closest to us that we're walking along to get here, that's kind of like down where the TIE fighter was. And the beam backwards from here, so where we're currently parked, is the screen where the escape pod was. And you could tell that because the wall was kind of there as well. But if we like look machine now, we can see from your seat, you can see a handle presently being gripped by you, which controls motion, and a button named claw. Press claw. So it looks like I was kind of off of where I needed to be. Finding nothing here to carry, the claw begins ascent to the grabber unit. So we just need to reposition ourselves a little bit. I remembered it was one of these, like, you can sort of see those dark, shadowy black regions. I knew it was one of them. I swore it was that one, but it must be this one. Press button. So down goes the little grabber. Okay, now we're on target. The claw senses contact with a warp motivator, grasps it firmly, and begins its ascent back to the grabber. I always thought it was really cool, like these anti-gravity things. It's like a force field pulling it up. Okay, so now that we've got the warp motivator, we can continue to back it up. And we're going to have to put this into the aluminum mallard. Now for this playthrough, if you're doing this strictly like your first time you've ever played the game, you'd actually have to go through a heap of things to get into the aluminum mallard. And in there, there's like basically a screen, like a panel screen. And if you look at it, it tells you what's wrong with the ship. And it basically says it's missing its warp motivator, which is this thing that we're carrying around here. And it's also missing an auxiliary power reactor, which we're going to find later. But it literally takes ages if you do that in sequence. So just for this playthrough, I'm kind of cutting that bit, but you'll see what I mean later. Now, here we are again. We're kind of on that forward part of the grid. The aluminum mallard was right about here-ish, I think. So let's just press button. Let's see if we've got this right. Oh yeah. Remember it said about the prong earlier on? The prong was kind of a clue that it needed to be dropped into like a receptacle. But here we see, sensing an adequate surface, the claw releases its cargo and begins ascent to the grabber. The object thuds into place within the cavity of the ship. Again, if you went through this and you got all the stuff to get into the ship, you can kind of look there and it gives you a clue saying, you know, there's a socket here, there's something missing. But yeah, it literally takes forever because by the time you climb up, climb down, go up the conveyor belt, jump onto the grabber, do all that, it's a bit much. I always found it weird how like you couldn't hear the beeping noise on that past screen too. I don't know if there's supposed to be a noise for like the shredder thing, but maybe Sierra didn't get around to actually doing it. Okay, so here we are back with the robot. At this point I should probably save game. This time we are put motivator in ship. Okay, get up, get out. There we go. So there's this little chute thing here. Again, like when I first played this, I was like, oh no, this is gonna be like certain death. Uh-oh. Oh no, 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 no. Okay. So, as I was saying earlier, you really bit the beam, Buckwheat. And there's that lack of regard for organics in action again. I guess they never heard of the warning shot concept around here. Anyway, you're dead. Hope you enjoy your new flow-through ventilation system. Oh, that's a little gruesome, but yeah, cool. So yeah, the robot dude will tolerate you to a point, but like, if you hang around for too long, you'll be dead. So we've got to fall down like this hole. First time I did it, it's like, oh no, I've fallen down a hole, it's going to kill me. But you sort of go down like a weird trash chute thing, and fortunately, you come relatively soft landing in a pile of debris. Now, who are these sinister things? Look, animals. I think they're rats. You can hear something scurrying above you. You can't actually see the rats because they're hidden in the shadows. That's probably not going to be good. Look around. You seem to be in a debris enclosed hollow. Poking out of the ceiling is a chute for which you originally entered through. Some crusty lamps linked by non-UL approved wire provided initial illumination. For those who don't get it, there's so many inside jokes here. UL's Underwriters Laboratories. It's like an institution in the US where they certify like mainly electronic stuff, but anything like pressure vessels, that sort of gear. So basically it's saying like there's some crusty lamps by non-UL approved wire. Means that it hasn't been tested, and if you're using it in America, it's probably illegal. Okay, so look, wire. Everyone loves to flirt with danger with this stuff. Some brittle looking wires runs from lamp to lamp and then disappears on a hole in the left. Okay, look, hole. You peer into the small opening and notice a tiny reactor which seems providing power for the lights. So this is the other thing you need to get the ship running. Take reactor. Trick is with this game, like, as well, even if you don't know what you're going to use it for, if you can take it, generally speaking, it's a good idea. When we get to Space Quest 4, there's a thing in there where it's a very bad idea to take something, but in general, if you take something, it's not going to be the end of the world. So you unhook the reactor from the cheap wires and take it with you. Notice how it's made a great deal of, like, emphasizing how cheap the wires are and they're non-UL approved. Basically, that's another hint that they're going to be worthless if a puzzle comes up that needs wires. Well, there's a cool ladder here, so let's climb ladder. There's nothing else cool down here. Some like ironing board, washing machine looking stuff, but we don't need it. Bending aside a thin piece of scrap, you find an opening into an area and climb on in. So we're kind of back to where the bow tie fighter is. Another thing that took me ages to figure out when I was younger is you can actually take the ladder at this point. Which is super useful because now we can climb into the ship. Okay, so now we've got a few things. Let's head on back to the Mallard. So another cool thing you can do here is like look tube. Something's done a real job. So we saw that before. Look tanker. See if we can get a bit more specific. No, that's about it. Notice how there's wires hanging down here, and before we were talking about non-UL approved crusty wires. Let's just look some wires. Except for the one on the left, most of the wires here look dangerously worn. So there's some good wires here. Now, I don't take the wires at this point because something bad's about to happen and we have just got mugged. Basically, this rat dude has just jumped down and he's like beat the crap out of us, which is great, but you have seemed to have been mugged by some type of large rat. As you pick loose the fur from your teeth, you notice a less bulky feeling. So when it says something like that, it's a good idea to look at the inventory. So we're carrying a glowing gem and a ladder. Notice our reactor is missing. So those little rat dudes we saw before in that hole where we took the reactor obviously liked the lights being on, so they've stolen their reactor back. If I'd taken the wires before the dude mugged me, he actually would have stolen the wires too. I don't know if that ends the game because you do need those wires later on in the aluminum mallard to get it running. They might put the wires back next to the reactor, but I've never tried it. So I always just don't take those wires because, again, if you don't have them, you've basically bricked the game. And Sierra is like famous for bricking the game by doing something in the wrong order. So we just put our ladder back. We can climb down here. Another little trick is like, again, when I was younger, I thought you had to go like climb the whole like garbage thing, walk across the monorail and come down the chute. But as it turns out, you can just use the ladder again. So if we look hole, peer into the small opening and the reactor is back. Take reactor. Notice how the rat dudes are no longer here. So I guess this time they don't see you steal it, so you are all good. But yeah. Alright, let's get out of here. Climb ladder. Notice there's a lot of typing in this game. It's not crazy bad. The one thing that was nice is when I played this when I was younger, I was probably about 4 or 5 years old the first time. It really taught me how to spell. So when I started school, I never found spelling that difficult, because if you spelt something wrong in this game, it was like, pardon me, this parser is too stupid to understand what you're talking about. So like, I used to get my parents to help me with it and be like, how do you spell this? And I had my little dictionary of things written down. Alright, let's take wires. Awesome. So yeah, I'd have my little dictionary there, and I'd, after a while, I'd played this game and, I'd get to the end and I'd play it through again and again, because I just loved the idea of being like a space hero. But it really taught me to spell, like, especially some fairly big words eventually. Climb into I. Can't spell today though, can I? Climb into I. Okay. So we should have everything we need to actually escape now. Alright. So, put ladder on ship. You can sort of see now that I'm standing there, the perspective's a bit better. You can see you can't easily climb onto it. Climb ladder. You notice it to be slick up here. Be careful. Yeah, that's a classic. We need to save this now. Alright. Standing on ship. Alright. Just for fun. Look, Lego brick. Look, Lego. They look like remnants of an orbital space station, or perhaps some sort of toys for an oversized child. I'm guessing the word Lego is probably trademarked. So at this point, you can just open the hatch thingy here. So if you go like, look, ship, actually, look, top of ship. Pardon me, this is too stupid. Look, hatch. There you go. So you can see there's a hatch here, so you can open it. But the slick thing's kind of cool. If you're really careful, you can walk down to the windscreen and like do a huge slider. It's like, you got lucky this time. I love that they built stuff in like that. Climb up. Open hatch. You move into position, grabbing the dull finish of the hatch's handle, commence to open and enter the ship. So this ship's what we're going to be flying around with for the rest of the game, basically. Again, like, if you did this completely linearly, you would get into the ship first, and then you go, look, screen. And this like screen thing tells you what's going on. You can see power is critically low. The auxiliary reactor is not online, insufficient power. So look around. At first you're surprised they're intact. The ship's interiors. Immediately to right is a panel with a red button. At the midship right wall is the ship's main diagnostic computer. Directly across are 2 passenger seats. Ahead is the cockpit. Notice there's something wrong about the floor though by those seats. So if you go look floor. Floor consists of mainly a ramp that is currently shut. An access panel has been removed to remove an empty reactor compartment. So there's your clue. So put reactor in hole. You drop the reactor into the hole. In attempting to reconnect the cables, you find that one is much too short. Classic. Put wire in hole. You carefully connect the wire between the ship and the reactor, putting the tile back in place once you're finished. I always thought it'd be really cool. The game doesn't allow you to do this, but if you could take the non-UL approved wire and put it in the hole and have like the ship burn down or something, or like get electrocuted. But unfortunately they don't let you do that. If we now look at the diagnostic screen, power level nominal, auxiliary reactor online. Auxiliary reactor nominal. Landing gear. Nominal. Warp motivator. Nominal. And again, if you hadn't put the warp motivator in when we did, it would have had something like missing. But it looks like this bird is in good shape. Excellent. So, what do we do now? Let's sit. So, let's go up to the cockpit and sit down. Just for fun, we can search seat. Searching around the cushions, you find, among variously coloured wanted lint, 7 buckazoids. The classic. Coins have fallen out the pockets when sitting in the seat. This is not necessary to play the game, but you can see up the top we have a score. We're up to 120 of 738. If you want to get a perfect score, you have to get those buckazoids. I think we may get a perfect score in this game, depending how I play it through. But the cool thing about Space Quest 3, which, let's see, ready to take off, is that there's multiple ways to actually get to the end of this game. Adventure games are pretty linear in general. Like, you're going to get to the same point at the end. You can't branch off hugely, but there's a couple of different ways to solve a couple of puzzles, and some will give you a perfect score, and some will give you a less than perfect score. So, yeah, depending how I play this through, we may or may not get one. It's more fun sometimes to play like the ridiculous way through the puzzle rather than the actual logical way. So now if we look screen again, there's actually a screen at the front here. We have this cool, like, Star Trek-y type touchscreen panel. Well, that's what I like to think of it anyway. You can see here we've got a few options. We've got engines, radar, that sort of stuff. The engines and radar you can see are in a slightly brighter color. That means they're available. Now, radar is always a smart idea. If you don't turn that on, you're going to crash into things, and sure enough, if you don't, you will crash into the side of the garbage freighter. So we'll turn on our engines. Adequate thrust achieved. I don't know, this makes me feel like I'm in Top Gun or something. Alright, cool. So at this point, we can now take off. Again, if we turn the radar off, we're going to be in deep trouble. But let's just take off with the radar on, because I don't particularly want to crash into the top of the ship at the moment. You feel a strong rumbling as the ship strains to loosen itself from the confines of the junk heap accumulated at its base. Finally, it begins to rise. That is so cool. The ship rises several meters, then stops abruptly. An alarm from the computer attracts your attention. So yeah, if you didn't turn the radar on, you'd be getting a message saying you're dead because the ship just kept rising until it crashed into the top of the garbage freighter. So at this point, you know, what can we do? We can land it, which that's pretty boring. But notice how the weapon systems is now active. So let's go into weapon systems. Alright. What we've got here, again, makes you feel like you're in a fighter jet or something. You've got shields and you've got fire. So, good idea to probably turn on the front shields before you launch a full-on assault into the garbage freighter. But let's fire. Oh yeah. The shot blasts a new orifice in the side of the junk freighter. The pressure generated by the desire of the ship's atmosphere to escape the considerably lower pressure of space causes your ship to be spit out like a watermelon seed. And there we go, we have escaped the garbage freighter. So, I don't think it really matters, but I always like to go back into the weapon system and turn off the shields. We're going to have some battles later on, and you need the shields, like all of the shields, to survive with no mistakes. So, I don't think if you're just cruising around, it actually, like, you know, depletes them, but yeah, who knows. Alright, so now what do we do? Well, let's do some navigation. Again, I always found this so cool. Let's scan the current quadrant. So, in Sector 82, we have a planet Ortega. Inhabitants unknown. Volcanic crater strewn surface. So, we're going to go there, but just not yet. Planet Flea. Again, a nice play on words there. Light atmosphere, one known settlement. So, yeah, we can go to Flea. That could be cool. So, just for fun, let's see what else we've got that we can go to. We have a monolith burger, the Golden Arches. It's a fast food dive. It is in Sector 62. A finite number have been served. Monolith burger is fun. I think let's just go to Flea first. Monolith Burger is definitely a fun place to visit, but we can have a bit more fun on Flea before we get there. It also helps because at Flea we can actually get a little bit of cash, which makes it a bit easier at Monolith Burger. Course locked. Now, here's a fun thing. So, in the flight mode, we've got light speed, attack speed, and cruise. Like, if you put it in cruise mode, so let's press number 4. The ship kind of like goes up here, like it's going to go to warp. And then, off it goes. Oh no. What is this ominously cloaked vessel behind us? Oh, this dude is so cool. Identity confirmed. Case OU815 Roger Wilco. Wanted for vending machine fraud. Plaintiff, Gipperzoid Novelty Company. Judgment. Terminate. I always thought this dude was so cool. Obviously, it's a play on the Terminator and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think he's called Arnold the Annihilator, but yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. It's going to take quite a while at this speed. You've got time to get up, make a sandwich, or wax the car or something. So, fun fact, most people at this point go, oh, well, this sucks. It's not actually going to get there. Fun fact, it actually does. I played this once just for a joke, and I left it going, and it seriously takes like 2 hours. But you get there. So, just for fun, let's just leave this, and I'll actually do a bit of a time lapse on this. And I'll put it into the video, and you can actually see, and we'll work out how long it exactly takes. Okay, so I've got this now set at about 10 times speed. It's not as bad as I remembered. It only takes about 16 minutes in total to go from the garbage freighter to Flea. So nothing crazy. Definitely, if you want to go make yourself a sandwich, have a 10-15 minute break. You know, that is a very viable thing to use the cruise speed. So in a second here, we're going to be arriving at Flea, and then we'll just go into orbit, and we're going to land on the planet. So when you're orbiting a planet, obviously, you've got a few options here. You can land, you can go back to the nav system, go somewhere else, but on Flea, we're going to land. When I played this years ago when I was younger, I used to love just flying between the planets and just landing and like walking around and exploring and then getting back in the ship and flying to another planet. But with a mighty whump, you set the aluminium mallard down on the surface of Flea. Okay, get up. Save. On Flea. Notice I save it relatively relatively often. There are certain points that's more dangerous than others, but it just sucks to have to go back. Press button. Okay, so the button activates this little rampy thing. You couldn't do that in the garbage freighter because the thing was like bottomed out on the garbage. But luckily for us, it still works. As you step out of your ship onto the surface of Flea, you're hit in the face by harsh winds. It looks like a storm is brewing. Meanwhile, another spacecraft touches down elsewhere on the very same planet. And this can't be good. Yeah, this dude means business. It's got like the full-on 4-pack going. Like those shades, man. You don't want to mess with a dude wearing those shades. And he's invisible. Even better. Yeah, so this dude really, really does mean business. We're going to meet him quite soon. So it's nice they put that in there just so you know in a minute when he like appears out of nowhere what is actually going on. So at this point, we can just explore around. So let's have a look down here. Oh, that doesn't look good. Look. Snake. You sure wish you had one like that? Yeah. Run? Gee, that's a very good idea. I can't. Ah! Yes, I can. Okay. So there's a snake down there. Let's just save this on Fleabot again. Just for fun. Let's see what happens if, like, the dude eats me. Ah! Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's it. I love the detail they've put into these sort of things. Thanks for playing Space Quest 3. As usual, you've been a real hoot. Snake chow. Okay, so yeah, we don't need to explore down there. So how about let's try to the east. Again, Space Quest and these Sierra early games, they're all in a grid. So basically, yeah, you can map this out, but Space Quest 3 doesn't really have any mazes, so it's pretty easy. Oh no, a venomous scorpizoid. Watch out. So the scorpizoid's like an electric eel thing that's a scorpion. Here it is. Run away. If you get bitten by it, it basically electrocutes you, which is kind of fun. Maybe we'll find one, let it electrocute ourselves in a minute. But for now, let's just progress along a bit. So you can kind of wander along here. As I say, you could map this out if you really needed to, but like it's pretty simple. There's only like about, I think, 6 or 8 screens before like there's just endless desert or a snake or something that'll eat you. Yeah. Should be appearing here in a minute. Maybe. Maybe not. There I am. Come on. Surely I should be able to walk down here. Why is it not letting me do that? Okay. Let's do this a bit differently. So back to this screen. Should actually let me do that. Like normally if you just watch what happens on this screen, he'll kind of go like down the sandhill and you'll see him kind of coming up the other sandhill. And then there we are. Ah! Oh, okay. The scorpizoid stinger hits its mark, sending electroplasmatic venom into your system. Death comes quickly. So yeah, the scorpizoid's mean business too. Love how he's just kind of walking around there still. Thanks for playing Space Quest 3. As usual, you've been a real hoot. Okay, so yeah. That wasn't quite planned, but let's try that again. Scorpizoids, like, in a minute, you'll sort of see we have to walk around a bit more. They can be a bit annoying like that, where you just literally change screen and it'll be right there and it just kills you immediately. But hey, that's a Sierra game, and that's what makes them fun. So from here, we just need to go east one. That's what I was trying to do on the other screen, but for some reason didn't work. Look, monster. Your fear turns to curiosity as you realize that it is not a real beast, but a mechanical creation. Although it still looks dangerous, you can't decide whether to blast off this rock or inspect further the wonders of Fleabot. Ah, we're going to inspect them. Where would the fun of blasting off be? World of Wonders. Another full-on space tourist with a wood panel station wagon. Another very 80s thing. Alien scum. Okay. So, we're about 40 minutes in now. I think this is a good point to call it for part 1 of this video. We've basically made it maybe... I'd say we're a third of the way through the game. From here out, it's pretty easy. It's just a lot of like collecting stuff and putting it together and having a lot of fun with like weird and wonderful ways and deaths and stuff. So thanks for watching this far and stay tuned for the next installment. Later.